Good evening, barflies and lounge lizards, and welcome to the Whacky World Drive-in. And for those of you that don't know, because we haven't done one of these in quite a while, this is my podcast/videocast with my favorite movie blogger, Mr. Dick Vincent of the Oak Drive-in.
Hey everybody, it is good to be back. This is kind of like our reunion show, reunion tour. It's been a few years, but it's cool to be back.
And we were talking before, and it looks like we've been doing this now for close to 10 years.
Yeah, 10th anniversary. Of course, we had a bit of a gap in there, but we'll still say 10 years.
Okay, so before we get into really the meat of the episode, we got to hit the pressing question, the one everyone's been screaming for, the one the fans want to know. What two classic monsters that have never battled would you most like to see battle?
I kind of went forward a bit, maybe into the 70s, and my two I wanted to see battle are the little monster baby from It's Alive and Belloc from the Basket Case movie, the little evil Siamese twin monster that he carries in the basket.
Mm-hmm.
I think I may have to give the thumbs up or the odds to the baby just because he has all four limbs, teeth, claws. But the little monster from Basket Case, he's pretty tough. He could hold his own for a while, I believe.
Oh yeah, Belial was a vicious little sucker, so I don't know. I haven't seen It's Alive in so long. I don't recall how mobile or how vicious that baby was, but I remember Belial. He could go to town.
Yeah, he could tear some stuff up.
Okay, interesting. So with mine, ideally, I think my dream one would be the Venusian from It Conquered the World versus one of the mollusks from The Monster That Challenged the World. But I don't know about the mechanics of it. It would be kind of tough to get those two even together.
Yeah, you'd have to get the Venusian monster on a boat somehow.
Yeah, because even though he has those big, nice arms, you just don't know if he could swim or not. So it might be kind of a...
Well, of course, he could be in because at the end of Monster That Challenged the World, the monster was in the lab.
Right, okay.
So if you got the Venusian in the lab, then they could go at it.
Oh, that would be a battle. But so more realistically speaking, because this is a realistic channel where we talk about realistic things, I would go the teenage werewolf, the Michael Landon teenage werewolf, versus the hideous sun demon.
But that'd be a matchup.
Yeah, and tough call too, because both pretty vicious, both good humanoid-esque things that wear clothes. It would be the battle of the monsters that wear pants.
Oh, yes, wear pants. I might have to go with the sun demon if you were laying odds.
Yeah. Because as we talked about before, because we've discussed this very important topic before, their moon-sun cycle things would have to sync up. So they'd really only kind of have a few minutes at dusk or at dawn to battle, but what a few minutes it would be.
That would be, yeah, you'd have to start it in the morning, take a day break, come back at dusk or something. But that would be a duke-em-up.
Mm-hmm. So why don't you tell the folks a little bit about your blog before we really get into things?
I have a blog. It's the Oak Drive-in. It's at the Oak Drive-in blogspot.com. I kind of took a couple of years off. I was just got a bit burned out at it, but I'm back with it the past month or so. Got a few new posts up, and I just kind of write about weird movies that catch my eye.
Some of you folks think that I have a deep knowledge of obscure movies. This guy, it's incredible the stuff he knows. This is my Yoda.
Oh, thank you, Rob. That's an honor.
Yes. All right, so now this whole episode thing. Why don't you, for those folks that don't know, even though I'm sure everyone watching/listening this already knows, tell us about the Monster Kid phenomenon.
Monster Kid phenomenon probably started, I think, in the 60s, and I think still continues to this day, you could probably say. I know little kids that are into monster stuff, but it kind of started maybe when Universal sold their film package to local TV stations under the Shock Theater name, and a lot of times local stations would have their own horror hosts that would show them. I'm from Detroit. We had Sir Graves' Ghastly. And then later, or at the same time, and going through the decades, you had the magazines come out, like Famous Monsters of Filmland, Monster Times. And tied to it was all the merchandising, too. You had toys, you had games. And, of course, probably most famously, you had the Aurora monster models that I think are probably when one thinks of Monster Kid, that's what you think of if you're of a certain age.
That is a big part of it. It's like the models and Famous Monsters magazine and the others of its ilk are kind of really synonymous with that time period in Monster Kid.
Yeah, it is. And for me, I always think of the Aurora Monster models, because I started watching. I When I was very young, I remember being kind of enthralled by the Universal Monster stuff. And I guess my dad, he must have noticed this, or maybe he was a fan too, because now I was a real small child, like too young to build models. He went out and bought the Universal Monsters, built them for me, the Aurora kits, and painted them up beautifully. And I had them in my room for years. They sat on a shelf. And I also got to give a shout out to my mom who built the Aurora Wolfman kit for me while my dad was away on a business trip. So,
What all ones did you have, and is there any chance you have a photograph of the collection?
no, I don't have any photos. I had a Phantom, which was kind of my favorite, Phantom of the Opera, because it had the guy in the dungeon. I thought was cool. And I had the Creature, Dracula, the Mummy, and I think Frankenstein. Then later, when I started building them, I got like Hunchback, King Kong, and I think I ended up getting the old or the Bride at some point. I think I got to the Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah, I went through a strange little Phantom of the Opera phase as a kid. It was short lived, but I remember one Halloween going to a school carnival that oddly enough wasn't my school. I don't remember why we were going to a school Halloween carnival that wasn't my school, but I remember I dressed up as the Phantom that year. And people kept thinking I was Dracula, and that annoyed me so much. I was like, it's obvious I'm not Dracula. I'm wearing a top hat, even though I don't think the Phantom wore a top hat, but still, in my mind, Phantom top hat. And it just aggravated me so much that they kept thinking I was Dracula.
Yeah, plus you didn't have any fangs either.
Yeah, no fangs, kind of different. I was trying to really going for that Cheney, trying to do the Cheney makeup style.
Well, the Phantom was always a weird one. I liked the model, and I at some point I saw the Lon Chaney version and loved it. But the kind of the Universal monster version that's considered with the other monsters, the Claude Rains one, I remember seeing that as a kid and thinking, there's an awful lot of singing going on here. Not a lot of monster stuff.
I don't think I've ever seen that one.
It's kind of an opera with a monster kind of attached nominally to the plot.
Okay, yeah.
It's kind of the odd man out in the whole Universal monster thing. And it's shot in color,
Mm.
so it's kind of a odd duck.
Yeah, it's kind of odd too. Speaking of odd ducks, the fact that I had that little Family of the Opera kick, little phase, because I know I'd never seen the movie. My only exposure to him probably would have been the Remco mini monster figure.
Yeah, and that probably had my favorite artwork of all the old Aurora kids, just because he had that like
Mm.
green face and all the wild hair and stuff. It kind of scared me, probably.
Mm. Yeah, on kind of a similar note, that was one of my early exposures, and one of the things that kind of started me on the path to Monster Kingdom was the Remco Mini Monsters line in the 80s, because they had the Universal Monster figures, and I had them all, and I was just all about them. And the creature figure I played with so much that it literally fell apart. It didn't break. Actually, the glue, and it just came apart, just fell apart.
Cool. I remember too that we had an aquarium at some point when I was a kid, and of course I insisted we had to get the creature
I had that one twice.
aquarium toy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get kind of rotted away in the water after a while, but I had to have my creature. If we're getting an aquarium, I insist on a creature.
I didn't have an aquarium. I just saw
Oh,
a creature toy, just had to have it, and it was so fragile. It almost immediately broke. Like I said, I had it twice, but man, I was all about it. And I guess I should jump back. Kind of the thing that set me on the path that really made me the monster kid was when I was 3 years old. My dad took me to a 3D revival showing of The Creature from the Black Lagoon, and that was it. That point on, I was the monster kid.
oh, cool. Was it so you had the glasses and everything?
Glasses and everything.
Neat.
And I tell you, I was so much the fact that even around school and stuff, I was kind of known as the weird little monster kid. I remember when I was in first grade, the teacher was writing words up on the board for us to pronounce, bigger words. And of course, my word was monster.
Yeah, I remember in grade school I used to wear those little oh, they weren't exactly universal license, but they were these cheap little iron-ons you could put on t-shirts of
Mm-hmm.
like the
All
different
right.
monsters. Yeah, I used to wear those and teacher would always kind of look at me. It's
Mm-hmm.
like
Guys, I missed out on the 60s Monster Kid wave, obviously. But because of Zacherley's horrible horror and then my exposure to the Universal Monsters, I still had interest in the stuff that the Monster Kids of the 60s would have been into. Like all the 50s sci fi and 60s stuff.
Yeah, and as far as the Aurora kits, they kept reissuing them. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
could buy those all the way up into the 80s and 90s. And I remember in the early 70s, they came out with the Monster Scene kits, which were only around for a couple of years because they ran into some issues from some parents groups with them because there's some kind of weird S&M stuff going on with those. But they had a Vampirella kit, which really made me excited because I loved reading the Vampirella comic. It wasn't a very good Vampirella likeness, but it was Vampirella. So I got my hands on that one and I was really happy.
Oh, the box art's great.
Yes, they did. That's one thing about Aurora. They always had those gorgeous box art artists that did those paintings.
Well, I've said many times before, I have absolutely no painting, modeling skills, anything like that. But I love model kits. So I'll just buy them and keep them in the boxes as like an art piece or collector piece. Like you can see right behind me, there's two Lost in Space kits right there in that game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I have a friend who does that too, that buys a lot of it because they've reissued so much of that stuff. He just buys them and puts them up on his shelf.
Yeah, you mentioned the model kits being reissued, and that's true. I actually had the Mummy kit, and my mom put it together and painted it for me.
Oh, cool. I always like the Mummy. I thought it always has a really cool base with the ruins and the
Mhm.
Cobra and stuff and him kind of, lurching forward towards you.
And I don't know if it was because the movies were in black and white or why so, but my mom painted him mostly in gray, which was cool. It really worked. It was like kind of grayscale Mummy.
No, the Mummy probably is mostly gray. Then they came out with those weird ones that were like, they were called neon.
Mhm.
I think they like glowed in the, they were those real bright pink and green ones.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Then for a while, at some point too, you could get them where like the heads and the hands were made out of glow plastic. They would
Mhm.
glow in the dark.
Right. But I mean,
Yeah.
who wouldn't want a bright pink creature from the Black Lagoon? I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah.
every
Yep.
every kid's wish. So a big part of, and you've already touched on it, the Monster Kid phenomenon is the horror host thing. You said yours was Sir Graves Ghastly.
Yeah, he was on Saturday afternoon and he was like an old dressed up like a vampire, as I think a lot of them did, and he ran all the old Universal stuff.
How long did it run?
He was on for quite a while. I think even after I had maybe moved out of the Detroit area, he still was on, and he was alive up well into his 90s because I he was still selling autographed pictures. I got an autographed picture of him around here
Oh,
somewhere.
nice, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, my horror host, even though my hometown didn't have a, it was a small town, it didn't have a host of its own. But of course, as I mentioned, I guess would have been Zachary because of the horrible horror tape. Even though I didn't actually get to watch his show or anything, he's the one that or it kind of means the most to me and the one that really cemented himself for me because of that tape. And oh, I've watched it so many times.
Yeah, that was a really cool tape. And it was one of those things where you watched, like a lot of the early trailer tapes that came out, you would watch these things. And even though they weren't trailers, maybe they were just clips of movies, but you would see these things and would be like, oh my gosh, I have to find this. But a lot of times you didn't know what the name was,
Hmm.
it had been retitled. And back in the early video store days, it was just a matter of wandering the aisles looking for stuff. No way to look this stuff up.
Yeah, because at that point, I of course knew the Universal Monsters. But other than that, I was just kind of mostly just knew late 70s and 80s monster movies and such. That opened an entire new world for me. All the 50s stuff, all the 60s stuff that I didn't even know existed. And it blew my mind knowing that there was such awesome stuff out there that I didn't know about. But as you mentioned on that horrible horror tape, unless the movie trailer actually said the film's name, I have no idea what it was. There was so many movies on there that I didn't actually know the titles until well into adulthood.
Yeah, it was back in the early days of like, the 80s and stuff. It was pretty much you were on your own. I mean, you saw a clip and you'd go sometimes to Chiller Theater and to get some information, but yeah, it was pretty much you had to hunt for that stuff.
You've been to that Chiller Theater quite a few times, correct?
I used to go, me and a couple friends, we used to go twice a year, probably from the 90s up through the to probably for close to 15 years.
Most memorable Chiller experience.
Um, Probably I would always the first place I always went to against the back wall, they always had these probably 6 or 7 tables with something weird video.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great because Dave Friedman was always there.
Oh, so
Wearing a
cool.
suit, looking like he was ready to cut a movie deal right
Hmm.
then. And he was just the nicest guy in the world. Then one year I went there and Russ Meyer was there.
Wow.
And Russ Meyer and Dave Friedman were hanging out together.
Wow. I mean, talk about a dream setting, right?
Then I remember going to the restaurant or to the bar and later that night and seeing them sitting at a table talking and just thinking, oh my God, just think of the stories those guys are telling.
People often do that hypothetical situation as, oh, if you could have lunch with two or three people of your choice, who would it be? Those two right there. That would be a pretty good lunch.
I spoke to Russ Meyer and I did get him to sign, I believe, like a little lobby card he was selling. Um, and he was nice, but he wasn't very talkative. But Dave Friedman, like I said, was there every year. And the cool thing about Dave Friedman, he would be selling things or he would bring stuff up to sign. Whatever he signed, you would get like a 15-minute story behind
Mm.
that. Like, yeah, he just told, I think he was just one of the people that love telling stories.
Yeah, that's another one that whose work you turned me on to.
Yeah, and we also probably need to give a shout out to his the biography.
You
The
turned me on to that as well.
Youth in Babylon is still probably one of the best uh, autobiographies I've ever read.
It is, and the fact that the sequel never came out is one of the biggest missed opportunity. Oh, I would have loved to have read that one.
It was going to be called Gods of Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was listening to another, what was it, or reading something, and someone had mentioned that he had that book like 80, 90% done.
Mm-hmm.
And there's PDFs of it out there. Then they've been, I don't know who with his estate or his family talking about kind of getting that thing, what there is together and putting it out.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, because that would get into the real prime years of all
Mm-hmm.
the movies and everything.
Yeah, because the book kind of ended right at the point. I mean, the whole book was interesting, but it ended at the point where it was about to start getting really interesting.
Yeah, all the Carney stuff was really interesting, but it
Mm-hmm.
kind of when you got to the end, you're like, oh,
Mm.
okay, I'm ready for the movies.
Yeah. So here's one Monster Kid music. What kind of music did you dig as a Monster Kid in particular growing up?
I remember you could order those records out of the back of Famous Monsters. And there was one called Famous Monsters Speaks, which kind of just a lot of bad imitators.
Mm.
And then there was those, and there was some of the creepy music and sound effects you could
Mm.
order. Of course, you could get like some of the recordings, like of Christopher Lee and Boris Karloff, like reading, stuff like Edgar Allan Poe and things like
Mm.
that. All that stuff you used to be able to order through the back of Famous Monsters.
So did you kind of make the transition like a lot of us did from monsters to like rock and roll? Because that
Yeah,
step from like monsters to Alice Cooper or Kiss or
I don't really know if there was a transition. It probably was, but I wasn't aware of it at the time. Because I did like Alice Cooper a lot. He was kind of one of my early rock guys. And Kiss, yeah, so there probably was. I just probably wasn't aware of it at the time, but that probably was a stepping stone.
maybe transition's not the right word, but kind of that. It just seems like the two go hand in hand. Like if you were
Yeah,
a
because you're
monster
in,
kid, yeah.
yeah, because you kind of go for the kind of weird music and the weird, yeah, I could see that happening.
I'll tell you mine, surprisingly, even though I did very much get into Alice Cooper a little bit later, was the Monkees. That was kind of my, because they were on TV, they were wacky. They even had a couple of monster themed episodes. Like I remember the one where I think Mickey gets turned into a werewolf, and
Yeah, I used to watch the Monkeys too. I think that was part of the whole. I mean, there was the monster movies, the monkeys, and also there was like the Rat Fink
Mhm.
stuff. All that stuff was kind of interconnected, and like maybe like a little kid youth rebellion kind of thing or something. Yeah, but it was all kind of just there.
Yeah, I growing up in the 80s like I did, it was an interesting time because a lot of 60s stuff started popping up. I guess the 70s was just too close to the 80s. So that stuff wasn't going in the syndication yet. That stuff wasn't becoming popular. But throughout the 80s and into the early 90s, it was 60s stuff. So I often say that the 60s were as big a part of my youth as the 80s were. Because, I mean, the shows I was watching, Batman 66, Lost in Space, Dobie Gillis, The Patty Duke Show, Mr. Ed, and then, of course, movies like Planet of the Apes and Robinson Crusoe on Mars, and just so much of it was 60s base.
Yeah, I always think with nostalgia, maybe there's like a 20-year,
Mm-hmm.
because in the 70s you had all the stuff like it was a big fit. You had like American Graffiti and all the Happy Day stuff from the 50s. And I think it's maybe there's always kind of like a 20-year
Mm-hmm.
maybe window for nostalgia to kick in. But the 80s were a big, like you said, 60s time.
Of course, and then, like I said, the Monkees and Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp, even though that might have been early 70s, but it still kind of felt like a 60s show.
Yeah, and that was, I think, when the Monkees even got back together at some point and
Mm-hmm.
played together, and they
They sure
reissued
did.
all their albums and stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember they first started showing the Monkees on Nickelodeon in the afternoon, and I absolutely fell in love with it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and speaking of TV, maybe just going back a bit to another big Monster Kid memory or thing for me was Dark Shadows.
Ah, big Dark
Because
Shadows fan.
yeah, because they had a time where you got home from school and it was like click click, Dark Shadows was on.
Yeah, that's something I didn't discover until I was an adult, and actually until recent years, probably about 6 years ago. But when I discovered it, man, I went all in. It took me a year and a half, but I watched every episode.
Yeah, and I read an interview once with Dan Curtis, and he had this really interesting thing where he insisted that it came on, I believe, like at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, because his reasoning was kids got home from school and mom was getting ready for dad to come home
Mm-hmm.
for the dinner and everything. So that was the one time during the day when kids could kind of control the TV.
Got it.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize when they hear Dark Shadows, they think, oh, it's a gothic soap opera. But there's so much more to it than that. There is actually a lot of sci-fi on that show as well. And that was one of the things that really kind of turned me on to it was how much sci-fi and Lovecraft that show channel.
Especially the later years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, because there was a whole with Adam, the whole kind of Frankenstein plot going on, and then there was kind of like the great old ones almost kind of plot going on. Took over Barnabas for a little while.
Yeah, that's one thing I was, being up in New England, that I always thought they could have gone a little heavier into the Lovecraft stuff,
Mm-hmm.
just because the setting and that stuff. But yeah, that is a great show. And I remember too that Catherine Lee Scott was kind of one of my first crushes.
Ah, okay, yeah, all right,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break from the deep intellectual conversation, and I'm going to hit you with a would you rather. Because
Ooh.
even though those are old hat at this point, I like them. I still find them funny, and so I'm still going to do one. But this is a doozy. Now, this is a rough one I've worked out just for you, though. Are you prepared?
I am. Bring it on.
It's tough.
Okay.
Would you rather have to sit down and watch every Scream movie in order or give Torgo from Manos the Hands of Fate a sponge bath every day for a week? Told you it was a tough one.
I think I'd have to pick the Scream movies.
Wow, really? Oh, oh wow.
Yeah, because you can watch them and you could maybe drink heavily while you're watching them or something. With a Torgo thing is more of a hands-on thing.
I look at it this way, though. If it gets me out of even a minute of having to watch Scream, I would sud that Joker up and we would have ourselves a good old time.
Oh wow. I didn't realize you felt that way. I remember seeing, I don't think I ever saw any of them past the first one.
Yeah, I didn't either, but the
Because
first one was enough.
yeah, I didn't like the first one, but yeah. Yeah, I think I could maybe kind of sit through those if I had some other maybe forms of
Mhm.
mind stuff I could do.
Well, let's say you don't. You have to sit there, rapt
Oh,
attention, watching those movies.
now that's a different story. I think I may have to wash.
Torgo, and I think
Tor-
Torgo would be really appreciative of it too. Like I think
yeah,
it'd be a nice memory, it'd be a nice situation.
it would be. Yeah, I'm sure he would be appreciative of your efforts.
Okay, so now getting back to the less serious stuff here.
Oh, could I give one to you real quick?
Oh yeah, please do.
This is actually going to be one. It's not going to be like a bad thing.
Hmm.
I want to give you a choice of two good things, hopefully, to do.
Okay, shoot.
I just saw you on your YouTube had talked about Carnival of Souls.
Hmm.
So I'm
Thanks
giving
for
you the
watching.
choice. This is like a real estate choice.
Okay.
If you could own the Saltaire Pavilion and
Hmm.
live in that, or you could have Captain Spaulding's store from House of a Thousand Corpses.
Wow, that is a tough one, but I would gotta go with the murder rides, the store.
That's what I was thinking you were going to go with. Yeah.
Yeah, as I talked about in that video, I thought it was just so cool that he was just driving by it and was like, I need to make a movie there.
Yes. Yeah.
And he told the writer, do whatever you want, just as long as there's a scene with the ghouls dancing in the ballroom, you're good to go.
Yeah. And speaking of the Monster Kid memories again, that movie, when I was a kid, at least growing up in Detroit, that was like, that showed up constantly on late night television.
Hmm.
And you would see that thing, and you're always really tired because you'd stay up late to watch stuff. It was just kind of this hazy dream thing. We'd wake up the next day and think, what did I just watch?
Well, I saw that one on the Horrible Horror tape,
Yeah.
and it freaked me out so badly. Like it actually scared me. That was the only thing on that whole tape really that scared me. I didn't watch it until I was an adult. It was just too creepy.
Yeah. And she was actually at going back to Chiller, she was at a Chiller show one year.
Did you meet her?
Yeah, she was really nice. She was actually selling CDs of the organ music.
So she actually played it then.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I don't know if it was just a soundtrack CD, but she was selling the soundtrack CD with all the creepy organ. So I got that. I got her to sign it for me.
Oh,
But
that's
she
neat.
was really nice.
So I guess in a big picture sense, what are some of the movies as a monster kid, as a monster kid fan, as a middle-aged monster kid that just really define you as a monster kid? Ones that you can just go to and be like, "Yep, that's it."
The one that really kind of as a kid sticks in my mind to this day, the first time I saw it was Phantom of the Opera again, was the Hammer Phantom of the Opera. That opening thing with the credits where they zoom in on his eye,
Hmm.
just when I was a kid, that freaked me out. That like kept me awake for days, for
That's
nights.
cool that you got to see Hammer stuff as a kid because, again, growing up in the 80s, you were a slave to the video store and what they showed on late night TV. And back then, it just really, for the most part, they weren't showing stuff like Hammer or the Universal Monsters. So I didn't really discover Hammer stuff until college. But once I discovered it, I was like, wow, where have you been all my life?
Yeah, they were kind of course, a lot of them, the later ones were cut, of course, but still, yeah, they were kind of staples of late night TV for a while.
Like I remember seeing Bram Stoker's Dracula in the theater and being, let's just say, I'll put it nicely, disappointed. That's the nicest way I can put it. And so I guess my faith in a Dracula movie was very low at that point. And then years later in college, I saw the first Hammer Dracula movie, and I was just blown away with how good that was.
Cool. So the first Christopher Lee one you
Yep.
saw? Yeah.
Mhm. I've said it on the channel. It's interesting that Christopher Lee is so many of my favorites. He's my favorite Dracula. He's my favorite Frankenstein's monster, which I guess probably not a popular opinion, but I don't care. He's a great mummy. I mean, he's just so many great roles.
He was a great mummy. I think he was so good at playing monsters because he could act without saying anything.
Hmm.
He's one of those people, just his like movements and his eyes and stuff. Yeah, he is a great mummy. Just those, the way he just acts with his eyes is incredible.
An interesting thing with him too is he's one of those actors, one of those rare actors, especially with as big and intimidating as he was, that he could play hero and villain equally as well. Like in Horror Express, you almost like keep expecting him to be a bad guy, but he's not. He's one of the heroes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, it's funny, folks. Anyone who's listened to this podcast for a long time probably pick up on this little joke here, because back in the early days, in those early episodes, we could not go, 5 minutes without bringing up Christopher Lee? It was like almost became a running gag at one point, because we just praised him every chance we got. And sure enough, here he is back. And of course, Peter Cushing is another all-time favorite as well. Another one that's great as a hero and a villain.
Yes. Yeah, he could play a pretty despicable villain. And one of the great things you mentioned, you brought up Horror Express, is just seeing the interplay between those two in Horror Express is incredible. Like, I remember when they're testing for they have that test they give when they turn out the lights, and they ask Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing about giving them the test. And Peter Cushing says, "We can't be monsters. We're English, you know."
A great example with Peter Cushing playing a villain, and one of his best villains, in my opinion, and it's probably my favorite Hammer film, is in Twins of Evil. Because he's such a bad guy, but he doesn't know he's a bad guy.
He's just one of those. Later in life, I kind of always pictured him as kind of like that era's Jim Jones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
kind of just the religious fanatic guy who just gets carried away with everything.
And like, he's so evil in that movie, but he just doesn't know it. It's such a great performance.
Yeah. And actually, this is, again, going back to Phantom, but Herbert Lom, I just love in the Phantom. And then he showed up in Mysterious Island, the Harryhausen movie.
Mm-hmm. I watched that
recently.
Is
still my Captain Nemo.
Okay.
I mean, the Walt Disney one is great, but as far as I'm concerned, Herbert Lom is my Captain Nemo.
I don't think I've seen enough. I don't think I've seen enough Captain Nemos to really have a Captain Nemo.
But there's not a big selection. There's like him and Mason are the big ones, and everyone goes toward James Mason in the Disney movie. But Herbert Lom.
Speaking of an actor that can play both hero and villain equally as well, I'll tell you a movie that I didn't initially think much of. But then when I saw it a second time, I was just blown away by how good it actually was. And that's Witchfinder General.
Oh, yeah. Vincent Price is amazing in that movie.
I think when I first went in, I was looking at that Conqueror Worm movie poster. So I was expecting some giant monster worm thing to show up, and just kind of thrown off by that. But going in, realizing that's not going to be there, and watching the movie, I mean, wow, he is so wonderfully evil in that one.
Yeah, and he doesn't like ham it up at all either. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no arching of the eyebrows and the kind of yahaha. He's just an evil bastard in that movie.
Because with, say, Christopher Lee, when he played a good guy, he was a likable good guy because he was so cool. But Vincent Price's good guys were just so likable and endearing, and you just rooted for his good guys. And so when he could play such a bad guy, it was just really impressive.
I think he did some older film noirs maybe where he was a bad guy, but he didn't go that route too often, I don't think, did he?
Well, I guess there's his kind of anti-heroes. You have your Dr. Phibes movie.
Yeah.
And of course, like Madhouse, Theater of Blood.
Yeah, I was always kind of rooting for Dr. Phibes, though.
I was too, especially the second one.
Yes.
Because in the first one, he was still kind of a bad guy. But I think they realized how just cool and likable he was. And so by that second one, he's totally the hero of the movie.
Yeah, I always thought that, too, was a series they could have continued.
It should have. I think they had a third one kind of planned. It just never happened. Yeah, because I really want to know, did she wake up in the end? I think she did.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, kind of wrapping up here. Anything you've been digging lately?
I've really sort of the past couple of years really been getting into shot on video stuff. Mm-hmm. Shot on video horror from like the 80s and 90s. There's those couple of great Bleeding Skull books I got. And I've kind of really been delving into that. Some of it's been coming out on Blu-ray, but a lot of it's just kind of floating around out there on the internet. And some really good stuff. I came across one recently called The Black Crystal. And it was really kind of cool. Another shot on video, guy produced it, directed it, wrote it, starred in it, did the music. It's got this really great kind of synthy music score, and he plays this guy whose brother goes missing. He just kind of tools around the Arizona desert in this Trans Am and meets a bunch of Satanists who wear flannel shirts and have mullets and hooks up with a goth chick who's a witch. And it's kind of cool. I'm really getting into that kind of stuff. It's great just to see people that are able just to go out and make a movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I've recently befriended a filmmaker named Rock Savage who's been doing stuff since the early 80s. And he has some just really fun, interesting micro-budget films he's been doing over the years. I think you might get a kick out of some of his stuff.
Oh, cool. I'll check him out. There's a guy, too, that worked out of Baltimore for years called David the Rock Nelson. Just done a lot of real interesting. He got Conrad Brooks kind of star in a couple of his things. And
Like, I haven't seen any of that guy's movies, but I watched a documentary about him a bunch of years ago. So I'm familiar with him. I just haven't seen any of his actual work.
oh, okay. Yeah, he's cool. What was the guy that you just mentioned?
Rock Savage, and it's the Savage Film Group.
That's a great name.
All right, I guess that's all the time we have for this one. Why don't you, again, just tell folks where they can find you, because
Oh, okay.
people really need to check out the blog and your Twitter and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I do have a blog. Like I said, it's the Oak Drive-in blogspot.com. You check me out there. I'm also on Twitter at the Oak Drive-in. I also kind of nominally do Instagram, and I'm over at Blue Sky too. I haven't posted a lot on Instagram.
So speaking of the Oak Drive-in, do you have any kind of thing to tell you what your most popular blog entries are? Like, is there any kind of, I forget, any kind of statistics or rankings or analytics?
Well, there's kind of a funny story, actually. This is like years ago, probably like 5, 6 years ago. I can't remember what I did a post on. It was, surprise, surprise, something to do with Rosalba Neary. And somehow that post, it may have been Devil's Wedding Night or something. Someone on a porn site found it and put a link up on a porn site to it for some reason.
Okay.
So I remember firing on my computer one morning and looking, because usually I get around 2,000-3,000 hits a day. I remember looking, I had like, 75,000 hits.
Wow.
Going, what the heck? And you could look and see where the hits came from, and it was like, something, .com. It was a porn site. I go and I clicked on it, and some guy had put up pictures of Rosalba Neary and linked me. So I don't know.
Well, see, even the adult film world loves the Oak Drive-in.
Yeah, they do. So hopefully I picked up some new followers there.
All right, buddy, take us out.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for everyone coming back and listening to this. I know it's been a while, and we do really appreciate all you folks. And it's good to be back. This was a lot of fun for me, and I'm sure it was for Rob too. And just remember, you're a monster kid with your kid. You're always going to be a monster kid.
That's right.